Welcome to Mindful Mondays. This is episode 2 on the power of intention. So before we start, we're just going to tune in just with a minute's meditation. So just get comfortable, either sitting on the floor or on a chair, and with the back nice and upright. So just bringing one palm on top of the other and the thumbs touching and just resting that on top of the thighs. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, just relax the shoulders and just imagine any worries just sloping off the shoulders. Any worries from the day. And then just checking in with the body. So doing a body scan from the head to the neck, to the shoulders, all the way down the back, down the arms, to the hips, thighs, knees, ankles and toes. Getting present to any sensation in the body. And now getting present to what's going on in the mind. So just noting what is. And just letting any worries or concerns go, just putting them aside, like you're taking your shoes off before entering your home, just putting them aside while we set our intention for this Mindful Monday practice to understand the power of intentions. It's part of the foundations for mindfulness, and we're going to look at that today. Okay, opening the eyes, getting ready. Okay. So today's learning objectives are to understand the power of intention and understand a little bit about how our brains can be a bit tricky and the kind of barriers that we create to learning. And then also to know how to give allowance and acceptance to yourself through compassion during your journey. So what is intention? Okay. So at this point with Mindful Monday, we would have a group discussion about it. But we're going to just give you a moment to pause on that. What is intention? So here we have a definition. Intention is a mental state that represents a commitment to carrying out an action or actions in the future. Intention involves mental activities such as planning and forethought. Why is it so powerful? Let's look at it a bit further, a bit deeper. So, understanding the intention, number one is about awareness. So, it's raising the awareness of your intention. So, you state your intention to yourself and others through sharing. Perhaps if you're a visual person, to have a visual representation like a vision board so you can see where you're going to, what it looks like, to give you that motivation to look at it. It's about remembering. And this is key to any mindfulness practice because mindfulness is about remembering to be mindful at certain times. So the second element is attention. So this is focus awareness. And mindfulness training develops your ability to move and sustain your attention to where you choose to focus. This is the key point. It's what you focus on. So if your intention is to become mindful, then your focus awareness is on mindful training and your mindful practice. And whatever we appreciate, appreciates. Integrity and attitude. So it's really about following through on your intention. Do what you say you're going to do. Create healthy attitudes to fulfill your intention. And the healthy attitude is really to not put yourself under such a strict regime that you'll just get fed up with it. It's about giving yourself compassion as you go, but a healthy attitude is also celebrating the wins as you go through. So there are certain milestones in this, and it might be that your goal is to be able to sit in meditation for 10 minutes a day. And when you've achieved that, it's about celebrating that you've achieved, because that will provide the motivation to continue the practice. The other good attitude to develop is to question everything. So the Buddha's teachings actually outline the Buddhist attitude of mind, which is to question everything. The Buddha said, don't just take my word for it, go and test it out for yourself. And that's the key thing, is testing it out for yourself, because then you develop your own direct experience of it. So Tal Ben-Shahar was founder of positive psychology course in Harvard, and he says it's all about the questions you ask. So really start to think about what questions do you have unresolved, and be specific. If it's what is the meaning of life, that's not very specific. So it is about the questions you ask. So these questions are just examples. There's no right or wrong, and there's no sort of one way or the other way. So the Buddhism is the middle way. So really kind of to have your thinking and maybe balanced in the middle way. So not all or nothing thinking, that it's one way of thinking it is a hostile world, or one way of thinking that everything's kind, it's all about kindness. Because we have to look at things for what they are and see the nature of what is. So how do we set powerful intentions? So we really need to look for the gap. And we can do this just through meditation. And actually look at, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go to? And if we don't have a set plan of where we're going, then how will we get there? So you can relate this to a road journey. If you want to drive to Scotland, then you can develop a plan to get to Scotland. But if you don't know that you're going to Scotland, you just set off on the road, you could end up in Cornwall. So start to think about what the gap is for you. Is it about relationships? Is it about a new job? Is it about just inner peace and calm? Is it about being more skillful in your choices? So start to think about that. But once you've set the intention, just let it go. Because if we get attached to the outcome, we become grasping for that outcome and we don't enjoy the journey. So there might be stops on the way, there might be, meet people on the way, and it's about really kind of not getting attached to achieving that end goal, because there may be some sort of fear of failure coming into it. And when we really grasp, we're striving too hard, and that's about right effort for the practice, is not striving too hard, but not being lazy. The next thing is to center yourself. Intention is much more powerful when it comes from a place of contentment rather than a rise of a sense of lack or need. And then just trust in the universe, really put your intention out there and trust in the power of the universe. So this leads to the law of attraction, synchronicity. You create everything that happens to you. And this is real breakthrough if you can get to this, because then we take responsibility. There's a great video produced by Horizons Unlimited, who is just set off on motorbikes and they travel around the world. And there was an interview from a guy who actually said, if I think on the bike, everything that happens to me is my fault, this protects me. And it's so true. When you ride a motorbike and you have that attitude, then you're going to take more care and be mindful of everything. And that's the best mindfulness practice you can have, is riding a motorbike. Mindfulness is learning about how to surf. So you may have heard this analogy before. John Kabat-Zinn came up with it in his book, For Catastrophic Living, which is a fantastic book to read and get present to the essence of mindfulness. But basically, imagine it, the analogy is that it's about riding the waves. So when we're at the waves and they keep breaking, let's imagine that they are emotions or there's problems keep coming and coming and coming. And that is life. There's going to be something constantly coming at us. And what mindfulness is about swimming out to a deeper part of the ocean before the wave breaks. So you can start to see it coming and you're able to be more skillful, and it gives you time to choose a skillful response. And if we're always at the wave where the wave breaks, it can be very draining. And if you've ever actually been in a sea that's rough and the power of the waves, it can just bring you down to the ground, to the bottom of the ocean, very quickly. So get your surfboards ready. Putting the surfboard as the mindfulness training, basically. Mindfulness training is your surfboard. And like with anything, when we're trying to do something new, when we learn to walk, sometimes we fall. So when we learn to surf, sometimes we're going to fall off the board. But it's about getting back on it and understand perhaps why you fell off the board to get that balance. So, how does our brain work and what are the barriers to learning? It's really good to understand this, and this you can apply to anything that you're learning in life. If you're learning a new language or a new subject, you can look at this and apply it. The reason why is because we do have tricky brains, but it's more about the mind. Actually, the mind has its own place, and in itself can make heaven or hell, or a hell out of a heaven. So this is quite a famous saying, and it's true. You know, one person's place of paradise is another person's hell, um, and vice versa. So really, what it's saying is this quote is that it's down to our mind. Our mind creates everything, and it's our perceptions that we have. And here's a few things, key facts about our brain, because it is good to understand how the brain works and what's actually going on. Now, this statistic is questionable. There are many other statistics out there, but the basic fact is that 80,000 thoughts, um, let's say 80,000 thoughts a day, maybe more than that. But the facts are is that there are a lot of thoughts coming in. 86 billion nerve cells called these neurons, and the neurons are basically firing, and that's where every time they're firing, that's a thought. And mostly they're repetitive. It's the same thing that's coming up. You may be able to relate to this. Old competencies, so that's motives, emotions, behaviors are stored there, and then there's the new competencies nearer to the prefrontal cortex, and that's about imagination, planning, worry, self-awareness. It's all in there. So 3-to-1 ratio of negative to positive thoughts. So this is means will explain the reason why we have to work harder to balance out those positives against the negatives. Also, we're going to look at understanding the emotion systems, the threat, the drive, and the soothing systems. And then also understanding the reptilian brain is also just concerned with survival and automatic responses, and they're generated through past conditioning. And this is happening 99% of the time. So even within that 1%, that's our opportunity to be mindful. But you've got to get present to this, that we are pretty much on autopilot most of the time. And we need to get present. The more we do mindfulness practice, the more we'll be able to increase that 1%. So let's look at thoughts. And there's something called the thinking loop. And we've all experienced it when we go round and round and round and round and round. And it becomes very draining and it's distracting to what we really want to get out of our lives. So, thought loop is basically defined as an experience of becoming trapped within a chain of thoughts and actions and emotions, which repeats it over and over again in a cycle. And it can last anything from a few seconds up to a few hours, or sometimes even a few days. And the result is completely disorientating. It can lead to anxiety, if it spirals out of control. The cognitive process is basically out of control, and it's about bringing it back to the here and now. So here's an example of a thought loop. I'm going to bring the phone in and social media. So let's say, for example, I've got onto the phone and I've logged into Facebook, and I've seen pictures of a birthday party of a good friend of mine. And I've seen the picture, and it's generated a thought there and then. And the thought is, I didn't know about this. Why didn't I get invited? So that thought gets carried through with an emotion, rejection, disappointment, sadness, guilt, and then it goes down into different areas. So it may be, oh, have I done something to upset that person? Why didn't they invite me? There's so and so there, and I didn't get invited. It goes into jealousy or envy. And it's just going through into these toxic emotions and constantly going through what's actually happened, not looking at the reality, creating these stories in my head of I'm not good enough. Rather than confronting it and just giving the person a call, you're creating all these stories about it. So that's an example of a thought loop. And it could go on for a couple of hours or until you actually see that person and confront them. There is a way to break out of this. So we will be covering it. But let's look at the 3-system model of emotions here. So we got these 3 systems. We have the drive system, and the purpose of that is to motivate us towards resources. Okay, and the main chemical is the dopamine. And the kind of feelings involved are wanting, pursuing, achieving, progressing, focus. You want to do it, and you've got drive. You've got drive to do it. Then you've got the threat system. So the threat system, its purpose is to threat detection and kind of just to be better safe than sorry. So it's really kind of sending an alarm warning bell off in the amygdala area, and it's the chemical is adrenaline through cortisol. So the feelings are anger, anxiety, and disgust. The final one is the soothing system. And the purpose of this is to manage de-stress and promote bonding, happening in the prefrontal cortex area. And the chemical is the opiates or oxytocin is sometimes what we get from that feelings of love. And the feeling is contented, safe, protected, cared for, and trust. So these systems are happening, and they can come down to the flight, fight, or freeze reactions, and it's our reaction to certain things. So we may be in a place, and the last time we were in that place, there was some danger in that place. So what could happen is it could alarm the threat system, which is not a bad thing because it could be actually warning you, actually, it's not a very good idea to be in this place because the last time this happened. However, it is going to create anxiety of what if this happens, and you start going into these thinking loops of scenarios and meaning making. However, the soothing system is something where we can really control and manage our distress and just reduce injuries and illnesses. But it's because it comes from the prefrontal cortex and our brain goes back into the automatic mode, survival mode, that shuts down the prefrontal cortex. So it doesn't give us availability directly to that soothing system. However, we can start to train the mind to do that. So when it does become stressful, we can just take 3 deep breaths. And the more we practice that, the more it becomes automatic. So the drive system, again, it's something that the dopamine we can create. We can create that through getting the energy through exercise and other things. So when you understand these models of emotion, so what's actually behind the emotion, you can start to investigate what's going on. And that's the key word is insight meditations is to investigate it. So let's take a moment and do a self-reflection exercise. What thought loops do you get into? How often does your threat, drive, or soothing system get triggered? What are the ratios? Are you 70% in the drive or are you 70% in threat? Or are you 100% in soothing and chilling out? Just take a moment to think about this. Okay, so hopefully you've come up with some kind of thought loops. If you haven't been able to think of any, then start to log them. On your phone, there's a few apps. One of them is called Moody. One of the other ones is a thought diary, and that you can start to just note what's going on throughout the day. So let's look at the barriers to learning now. So this is the Abraham Maslow's theory of needs. And what we can look at is firstly, we need to get the basic needs sorted out. So it's really important that we have those psychological, physiological needs. So food, water, warmth, and rest. Then at the next level up is the safety needs, the security and safety. And then the belongingness and love needs, intimate relationships. So that's our psychological needs and esteem needs. So this feeling of accomplishment. And then self-fulfillment needs. So this self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. So what stops us from learning? What are these barriers? Well, let's have a look at the key defense mechanisms. So there's repression, there's denial, compensation, projection, rationalization, reaction formation, fantasy, and displacement. I'm not going to go through each one. This is something that you can do the work to look them up if you're not sure on what they are. So do that now if you need to, and just be clear on what they are. So now you know what they are, then start to see which ones that you start to bring up. So let's do a self-reflection exercise. Are your basic needs being met, first of all? Are your psychological needs being met? Do you feel self-fulfilled? What mechanisms do you recognize that are at play when learning something? So what are the defense mechanisms? Okay, so this is really good to put these things down because there may be some of your intentions might be to raise self-esteem or to get those basic needs met. You know, to have security, have your own house, have your own space. So the final thing we're going to look at today is how to create allowance and acceptance for yourself, just as you are. So we can do this through compassion. And this is about giving yourself permission to be human. It's about allowing yourself to make mistakes. And it's about quieting down the inner critic. So we have these monkeys on our shoulders constantly. And sometimes they say things are not very nice. Um, so maybe they need to be quietened down a little bit. The other thing to get present to is that we live in an imperfect world. We might strive towards perfection, but the reality is that there's nothing that's perfect, um, and we're all work in progress. Be responsible for your choices. So start to take responsibility. Start to see the cause and effect from your actions and your thoughts. And if you mess up, if you fail, then you mess up and you failed. But investigate it. Use it as a learning platform to find out why you messed up, because then you have knowledge so you don't mess up again. And the final thing is self-love and forgiveness. So there's also, we can look at acceptance through wisdom, so clear comprehension, understanding something, insight meditation, understanding impermanence and change, understanding emotions, and accepting the way things are. We're going to go through each one of those in each session. So here's the invitation to do the work. So here's the invitation to do the work. So set your intention for your mindfulness practice. Start to get present to how much doing and being is taking place in your life. Research how the brain works and note what defense mechanisms you have with regards to learning. And then do one thing that is kind for yourself between now and next week. So just finishing on this quote, have a mind that is open and attached to nothing. This is Tilopa. Be free here and now. So please feel free to join the Satori Yogi community. It's on Facebook, and there's also, you can follow Twitter and Instagram as well.